Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
And here we are. Happy Monday, everybody. We thought we might come in and just do a little Q&A with everyone. Later in the week, we have Dr. Arthur Kaplan coming in, the medical ethicist who I'd interviewed once before. We have Bethany Shandark and then Dr. Monica Gandhi swinging by. There's Bethany. She's a commentator. And then Monica Gandhi, I believe, is also on schedule for Tuesday, I believe tomorrow, because she's been taking a ration of shit online, and I thought I'd like to give her a place to come and clear the air. The main source of criticism she seems to be getting is that she dared to make a prediction. How dare she make a prediction about the course of infection of COVID in India, that she was sort of calling it as possibly going to end, or maybe she did a little more definitively than that, and it turned out to be wrong. Shocking that we could ever be wrong, that she needs to be condemned for ever having been wrong. Yeah, we must stop all this nonsense. No one's ever going to speak. Again, I keep recommending you guys to follow at Monica Gandhi, at Monica Gandhi 9 is her Twitter handle. And V. Prasad, MD, MBH, Vinay Prasad, Peter Attia. These are all great sources of information for you guys. Susan, are you good today?
Fabulous. Tired, though.
Oh, but you were right there on the mic. That was good.
Cleaning the garage.
Cleaning the garage.
Yes.
How's your schnoz after that? Usually that's a problem.
It's okay. I wear a mask.
That's good. Anything you want to talk about today? Anything on your mind?
No, I'm good.
Just did an interview for E! News with a really good interviewer. Francesca was very good, and
she's adorable.
Really trying to kind of struggle with the mental health issues around COVID and not afraid to ask the questions. Here's somebody, Russell, saying, I would love to talk about.
I want to talk about Heather McDonald.
Okay, hold on a second. Love to talk about a strange addiction I've developed, and I've heard of the if you've heard of the substance, so I'll be looking at Rust Bowl to see what that was. So Susan, tell us what happened yesterday, or what we found out yesterday morning.
So Alana texted me in the morning. I don't know when it was, but Alana? I was not really paying attention on the weekend to any social media or anything. Alana Sokol, our Ilana.
Okay, Ilana.
Our
okay,
fan,
got it. Yes, Alana, this Ilana.
And she goes, hey, I just want to let you know, I think Heather McDonald, has a brain fracture or a head fracture. And I was like, what? So I texted Peter and he sent me the video of when she was doing her stand-up, and it was just, did you watch it?
I did not. It was probably going to be too disturbing for me, but I guess.
Well, basically she was in the middle of her set, and she started kind of talking a little slurry, and then she was sort of stumbled forward like she was going to fall into the audience, went, whoa, and then fell back and into the mic, and then went flat down on her back and hit her head.
So she...
and then she laid there. Everybody thought it was a joke.
Well, it was not the middle of her show. It was
the beginning,
the opening.
Okay.
And the opening was, I've had multiple vaccinations and now I'm getting sick. And then they thought she was making fun of that or something.
Yeah. So anyway, people weren't sure if she was okay or if it was a joke. And she lay there for like 15 seconds. But I mean, I just heard this and I saw the video and I was just like, oh my God. And her son was there. Thank God. See, this whole, middle-aged people traveling alone is a bad idea, but I'm glad her son was there because, he could take care of her and be with her, and she went into the the ICU, right?
Right.
I didn't hear the rest of the story really.
So she was admitted to the ICU, and that's where they discovered the skull fracture and the subdural hematoma. So she has Caleb,
are we supposed to be telling her already, or I don't know? She's kind of already talked about it, right?
Peter had me help him put out a press release. So okay. I know it's in the press release.
They're very open about everything.
And maybe, Caleb, I don't know if this is possible. Can you show a picture of a subdural hematoma so people get a sense of what this is?
I'll see if I can
skull
find
fractures one. Thank you. And skull fractures are no fooling either. It means you've had a concussion, right? She was unconscious for 15 seconds or so. Any change in sensorium, Any skull fracture technically is automatically a concussion. And you can have lots of sleep disturbances, mood disturbances, cognitive disturbances for a long while afterwards. It gets sort of unpredictable. It's much like COVID, Fatigue is a very common symptom after these things. And I've not spoken to Heather. I think I'm going to be on her podcast Wednesday.
Maybe. No,
she finally gets
I want her
home.
to come on our podcast.
I know, but they've already asked me on theirs.
Oh, maybe we can
to
do
explain.
both.
So they're going to send me her paperwork, which I don't think I've received yet, to go over her discharge.
All right. So you're going
instructions and things.
earlier that day?
Zoom in, they said.
Oh, you're zooming in.
Yeah.
So can we zoom her in after that?
That I know you're anxious to do so, and you've asked him, and he said he can't tell yet.
And have 3 guests tomorrow?
She might be a little. No, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
I don't think
Okay.
we have anybody on Wednesday. Well, I mean, for 15 minutes, if she wants, since you're already going to be set up on Zoom, maybe she can just come on and tell everybody how she's feeling.
Yeah. It would just be a quick.
I don't think hers is live, so.
Right. So my concern was, hang on a second. I'm still looking for somebody was going to tell me what his weird addiction was, and I don't see it on the thread here. If you put it up there, unfortunately, I can't see it. So please do so again. And somebody is saying Susan is awesome. Let's see who that is. In Twitch, they put the names come on my screen in dark purple, and I cannot see.
I know
them.
he's colorblind. So
no, it's because I have a dark purple background.
It's also it's blue on blue.
Yeah, so I
it's
can't see it.
Jay Beasy. Hey Jay.
So okay.
JB.
And no news on Bob Saget's cause of death yet, right? So we don't know what's going on there.
I know, it's so weird. It's such a coincidence. She just had the
concerning.
vaccine 2-3 weeks ago.
Well, and so did Chelsea Handler.
I know.
Chelsea Handler also had vaccine 3 weeks prior and had a syncopal episode of fainting spell.
And these guys are like.
So my question is, I want to know more about why she fainted. I mean, it's she fractured her skull, got a subdural because she fell down, and she was unconscious already before hitting the floor. That's why she fell with such force. And I want to know why the blood supply to her brain was cut off like that. Usually that's a cardiac arrhythmia. They did a big stroke workup on her at the facility where she was staying. It was completely appropriate, and it was all negative. So that's the good news. And
I'm just so glad that she's okay. I mean, when my dad had a subdural, he had a subdural hematoma, right?
He had bilateral subdurals, and then he had a chronic fluid collection.
So my dad hit his head on the corner of a cabinet. I don't know. He's drunk and he fell out of bed, and then
that's an actual.
And then like a month later, I guess
Yeah.
it was slowly bleeding for a long time, and he was at Christmas and he goes, "I have a headache. I want to go home." And I was like, "No, you're going to stay."
Hold on.
And then
Caleb just put a picture up there.
Okay.
That is the actual blood under the skull. How about give me a CAT scan picture of a subdural hematoma?
Okay,
That's
so
kind of what I was
then
thinking about.
so
Go ahead.
then we were on vacation and we heard, oh, he's in the ICU and he had to have brain surgery because he had a brain bleed. So raced home, and there he was laying in the ICU with this big turban on his head with all these like tubes sticking out with blood coming out of it. And he was all happy because he was high, and he's like, "Oh, hi, I'm okay." Somehow this 90-year-old guy, or 85-year-old at the time, made it through. But down the hall, there was a guy that fell down, 18, hit his head on the sidewalk, and they were harvesting his organs.
Yeah.
So I've seen this up close and personal, and it's scary. It's amazing that
falls and brain injuries.
My dad had 9 lives though. God did not want him back, but he lived to 92, and he actually had a stroke after that, and he made it through that as well.
Yeah.
But but I mean, if she had fallen the right way, it could just be over, right, Drew?
Oh, sure. Head injuries are
She kind of fell on the
extremely
mic.
treacherous.
She hit the mic first. I think it may have broken her fall a little
This
bit.
is the best I can find.
There you go. That's subdural hematoma. That little rim on the right there is Heather's is even smaller than that. It's a very small little rim. And if they're small like this one's a little bigger than you like, plus it's causing a shift.
Yeah, but it can bleed over time, and then they have to have it drained, right?
Well, no. Usually the bleed you get is the bleed you get. It can accumulate over time, but not typically. That's why they'll do a follow-up CAT scan in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And if it's less than like 10%, 20%, they don't do any operation.
So if she has a concussion too, that could cause some
she will have a
mood disorders and stuff,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Now people are
Maybe
going,
she'll get funnier.
people are going nuts. I hope for her sake. People are going nuts on the restream. I have to address this. I am not saying the vax caused these episodes. It is weird and interesting that they were all 3 weeks after vaccinations. So I would like to try to investigate it further. I'm worried that there was some sort of cardiac something. It's clear that this spike protein does affect the heart. I know myself, when I was sick with COVID, the first time, the bad time, my fever was 102, my pulse was 78. That is not normal. There was something wrong. I knew right. I took my pulse. I was like, okay, well, that's not normal.
Well, what if her heart was just not beating right and then she fainted?
When the heart doesn't beat right, as you say, the blood supply to the brain stops and you faint. That's a common cause of faint.
Myocarditis.
Well, I'm not even, I just think
Listen,
we need
we're
more
not saying this caused it, but it is kind of a weird coincidence.
Weird coincidence that both Chelsea and Bob and Heather had a booster in a time frame, and I am not saying it was the booster. I'm just saying we need to explain what's going on with these people. These are young, healthy adults. And I want to thank all of them, because now my wife insists on traveling with me wherever I go, because she's afraid something's going to happen to me, which is the best news of all time.
I know he doesn't ever want me to let him go alone anywhere. But you kind of hit the ground running too when you're traveling. Mm-hmm. You fly in, you have an hour to get ready, you go do something, and then you schmooze, you work really hard, especially if you're doing TV and stuff. And then you just like I always try to get you a little extra time to rest and wake up and work out and stuff before you jump on a plane. But typically some people like go do their show and then they just leave the same day or come back the same. So it's a lot of stress on the old body, I'm not saying Heather's old, but we're middle-aged. Come on.
Well, no, we're not.
I know, but I just had to say that.
you can think of yourself that way if you want.
Well, if I was middle-aged,
your kids are approaching middle age.
I know, isn't that weird? No, but we live to 115 now, so we're not
just saying.
We're not there yet.
Okay. Jeez.
No, seriously, I was so concerned and so scared, and I'm so glad that she's getting home to her kids and and her family, and she's already, on the mend. So it just scares me.
Yeah.
If something happened to her, I would be so bummed. So bummed.
Yeah. So she's going to be fine. She's going to be fine. And it's going to be, a little rocky for a few weeks and stuff.
I was weirdly just thinking about her too when I got that text.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Maybe I should get my surgery now so she and I can recuperate together. That'd be fine. That'd be interesting.
Well, we're supposed to go somewhere there with them the first week of June. So we'd have to, I don't know if that's enough time
figure all that out.
To get better.
Figure all that out.
You might have to do it at the end of April.
Okay, so let me get to the restream here. Mark Gill, are we finally getting out of this pandemic? For the moment, I think we are. Whether or not there'll be some future challenges, statistically probable, but will we deal with them? Yes. Will we deal with them differently than we dealt with the past? I hope we learn. Lockdowns don't work. Masking has limited benefit. Therapeutics are the key. We have to distribute those much better, both monoclonal antibodies and the antivirals, which are still impossible to get. It is such a scandal to me. I don't understand why not more is made of that. It's just too hard for me to understand. I had somebody yesterday, again, trying to get both. Could not get either. Okay. And, sudden seizure. That's interesting. Wonder where that came from. Had monoclonal antibodies, part of the POTS syndrome. After vaccine, POTS got worse. That does happen. And I have a close friend who got severe long COVID with POTS just from the booster. He's really sick. He can't walk up 2 blocks, and I don't know what it is. I'm trying to get him hooked up with Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson. Let's see. Dr. Prasad says that mask mandates we lift by the end of the month. In many places, even New Jersey, they're lifting it mid-March, so it's coming. It's coming because they are, and probably not in California. California is going to be some sort of weird holdout because it already is. I don't know why. And it's funny. That woman that was interviewing me was complaining that you can't do anything because of the restrictions. She'll lose her job if she has any steps any way out of line. They're testing every other day. They're wearing masks 100% of the time. It's just super crazy. For something that's gone now. It was and let's be clear, Omicron can be rough if you're not vaccinated. Same as before, though. Not going to be rough if you're 19, not necessarily rough if you're 40, rough if you're 70. Rough. And if you've been vaccinated, not so rough. If you've been boosted, no problem seemingly at all. It was very, very mild. I've had this confirmed by many of my peers. Let's see. A new bill going through Iowa State legislature to limit the police powers of public health so that statements and recommendations instead of edicts. Tim, that's good. I would like to say rather that they could have their police authority if they can defend it with good science, if they have really clear reason to take those risks as opposed to impose mental health crises on the public. Woo, crazy. Is doing mushrooms why it's snowing the greatest thing or what? While it's snowing, I think you mean. It has an effect on your ability to use grammar, evidently. Let's see. All right. Let's go to the, let's get, Caleb, you good? Everything good with you?
Oh yeah, everything's going great.
Any new questions? Any concerns? Anything coming up for you?
How do you help a little baby who's teething? Poor boo boo. He's teething so hard. He just grabs our hand and bites really hard.
Frozen bread. Is he eating food yet?
Little bits and pieces. Yeah,
frozen.
He started.
We used to go to this place called Market City Cafe, and they had these big breadsticks, like in the, like these long,
like pizza dough, like pizza dough breadsticks.
And we take them home and we put them in the freezer. And they would just go.
It was really like giving it to your dog or something. It was really good. It really helped.
Made them chubby too.
Frozen bagels. Somebody said. Alana says frozen bagel. Good. I agree with her. She's right.
Is he eating food yet?
Little bits, like, so Taylor's doing some sort of a program. I think it's like called baby-led feeding or something like that, where she introduces something like, it's something new, I'm guessing, but it's something where it's like they add like certain bits and pieces. So we had like a tiny bit of peanut butter. He has tiny little bits of like banana he's had, but I think specifically avoiding baby foods. It's something to do with like, it helps with allergens and all of that. And our friends have done it and their kid is great and has no allergies. So anything to avoid the allergies now.
Okay.
And Crohn's, and avoid Crohn's.
Yeah. Oh, anything.
Let's get Nurse Agnes up here. Your hand was up. I called you forward, Agnes. Let's do it. Get more callers up here in just a second.
Hi, Dr. Drew.
Hi, Agnes. How's it going?
Good, thank you. I was asking what your opinion is on whether we should continue with our school students wearing masks.
Well, let's kind of reason through it. I watched Vinay Prasad's comment, and he has been on fire lately in terms of, just look at his thread. It's V Prasad, MD, MPH. And he is just pounding on the fact that there is no evidence to substantiate this. And there are innumerable observational circumstances that show you that there appears to be no benefit. The most striking being that no other country on earth that I know of is masking under age 5. And in fact, the World Health Organization and several other health agencies have considered it abusive, literally abusive, to try to mask a toddler, because it is. And rather than masking everybody, and especially masking outdoors, which is sort of a level of insanity based on currently available wisdom, that is so hard to understand. And things like putting up plastic barriers, probably the worst thing you could do, because it prevents the circulation of air, which, as we know, what is needed to prevent this thing from passing. So everything that seems to be going on with children seems to be contrary to currently available knowledge, and none of it based on randomized controlled trials. Does that fit? That sound right?
Yeah.
Yep. Were you an ER nurse? Is that right? Am I getting that right?
Case manager at UCSF.
Case manager. In what department?
Occupational health.
So this is a little different than what you're used to doing.
Yes.
One of the things that mystified me, since you're a nurse, I want to ask this question, is I'm still a little mystified by all this talk about burnout of ICU nurses and ER nurses. In that, when I spent a lot of time in an ICU, which was for probably a good 15 years, most people died. Death was part of ICU. In fact, our biggest problem was trying to get doctors to stop doing fruitless care in an ICU setting for people that were clearly going to die. That was the most upsetting thing we saw in the ICU. Not people dying, because people coming to the ICU typically die. Not 100%. Of course, there are people like Heather was monitored in an ICU and post-surgical cases, but people that are in extremis don't typically come out. And if they do come out, the life they lead is pretty nasty, pretty horrible. Where's all the burnout coming from? You know?
The staffing. We've had a lot of nurses resign because of safety concerns, especially our mature staff.
All right, so rather than 1-on-1 or 1-on-2, they're doing 3-on-1 or something like that, right?
They're doing double shifts with no days off.
Okay.
So the burnout is coming from no rest periods.
Okay. Because I keep hearing it, they're dying, people are dying. I keep thinking that it can't be that, because that's their chosen area, ER, ICU, that's what happens there. It's almost like, palliative care and being upset that people die in palliative care. It's like, that's where people go to die. But I understand now. Plus, they're having to bring nurses in from other countries and other localities and stuff, right? These sort of traveling nurses.
Yes.
All right.
And there'll be
So that
increasing
makes
demand
sense.
to fill the gaps. So it's staffing gaps, staffing shortages,
All right.
no days off.
That makes sense. Are the hospitals, this is the other question I had, are the hospitals, as they always do, stretching the staff, even though the staff is already stretched? Are they doing that game they always play of not getting enough nurse to patient ratio?
Not so much at this facility, but I hear that from other smaller community level
Right.
hospitals.
That makes sense. That's
As the surge has come in and they're overwhelmed in the ERs and can't move the patients through the system.
right.
But the thing that I think I've heard you talk on end of life before, and I think what we're seeing is we as a culture in the United States do not do end of life very well. If what we're expecting the family member to do is go into an ICU to die, and we're putting in ventilators and NG feeding tubes.
Well, you're putting your finger on something that I've been saying since early in the pandemic, which was this should begin to raise awareness of the fact that we have to be discussing our end of life wishes with the advanced age that we are living to. I said, if they at the time there were lots of nursing home deaths, and I said, look, the average duration of life after admission for a male to a nursing home is 6 months, and for me, don't put me in the nursing home in the first place. I don't want that 6 months of people turning me and wiping my ass. I'll take palliative care in my home, thank you. And people don't understand what that's all about. They really don't get it, and need to begin talking to their family and doctors about this issue. Do you agree with me?
I agree that we don't have PULSE, physician's orders for life-saving treatment, when the patient comes into the hospital. And we as a medical culture, we're not being proactive with our patients and our family members to do their PULSE so that their wishes are known.
That's just that's an easy one. You know what I mean? The fact that they're not even keeping up with the PULSE form is, to me, bewildering and astonishing. I thought we had that one. So what a PULSE form is you can get it online, and it just gives, what are your wishes if you have if you die suddenly? What are your wishes? Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be resuscitated only if there's a probability of meaningful recovery? Do you want nothing? It's just, you go through this thing and you take it, you fold it up, put it in an empty medication container, and you stick it in your refrigerator. Paramedics know to look there when they come to your house. And everybody should have one of those, certainly over the age of 75. And it's wild to me that we don't. Wild.
Well, it's a beginning conversation. I think it's a great way to start a beginning conversation on end of life.
Yeah.
But when family members disagree and they want everything done, we in our own family lost my brother's wife December 6th to COVID. Mm-hmm. She was 49 years old and unvaccinated.
Ugh. And
she had no pulse. And, my brother was really wanting everything to be done and prolonged to her death. With the ventilator and an NG feeding tube until finally she passed. And it was just a horrific decision for the family to have to make.
Awful. This is getting into the weeds on this a little bit. Were they able at least to do measures to keep her comfortable? They put her on a propofol infusion or morphine or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she was, but she wasn't ventilating at all. Her pulse ox continued to drop even on the ventilator.
I get it. That's awful, but I get it in a 40-year-old, I get it. That's just, it's so shocking, and not everyone's having those conversations in their 40s. But if it had been an 80-year-old, then it would have been like, come on, what are we doing?
We have a palliative care physician here who is doing a foundation called End Well, and he's doing a lot of education for licensed and family members on end of life and how to begin to have these conversations with your family. And I think that's really the beginning point for all of us, is to advocate for having PULSE and having advanced directives on file.
Oh my God, it's a little bit malpractice-y for doctors not to get that set up for their patients. But But it's easy conversation as a physician. It's very easy. And if you're having a trouble with that conversation, maybe you shouldn't be treating older people, because they all have ideas. They'll tell you quite clearly. And then your job becomes representing their wishes to the family. You have an obligation to represent the patient. And if somebody in the family doesn't understand, first of all, you can do yourself a favor by making sure the family members are on board with what you know. And if there's somebody who doesn't understand or doesn't agree, they can hash it out ahead of time. Or when the going gets tough, my job is still represent the patient, not the family members who disagree. And so that's how it's supposed to be done. And it's weird to me that we're not doing it. I think, we live in a time, Agnes, don't you agree, when people are like, I'm going to live to 130. We're going to get rid of aging and we're going to get rid of death altogether. It's like, you don't even, stop it. Stop it. You want to be 90 for 40 years? Really? You've never been around 90-year-old male, particularly? It doesn't always, except for William Shatner, who I'll happily take his 90s, but it's very, 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 very rare. And, why and who and genetics, and we just don't know. But it's living as very old, very advanced. Aging becomes its own illness at a certain point, and we need to talk about what we should be doing about it. Anything else going on with you? Anything else on your mind?
Just thanks for what you're doing and educating the community.
Pleasure. It's fun. Thank you for coming in, Agnes. Let's keep going to the calls. My goodness, we have a whole bunch now. So I'm going to try to get to you guys. Who did I see? Russ. Russ was up there earlier. So I will get to you, Russ. What's up? Oh, Russ, I really wish I knew what it looked like. There we are. Oh, Russ can't join right now. Okay, then we'll go to New Point. Where'd she go? There you are. If you like Newfoundland hounds, this is your person. Aaron, what's up? Aaron?
Hi, Dr. Drew.
Hi, Aaron. What's going on? Uh-oh.
Hi, I'm actually calling because I got a question about my son. I kind of freaked out when the whole COVID surge was going on and got his first vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of wanting to wait, a little bit of time before I got him his second one. I wasn't real eager about doing it in 3 weeks.
Well, that's actually very, very smart. They're now looking at stretching it to 8 weeks. Some countries do 12. It seems to improve the immune response and reduce the need for boostering.
Yeah, and we actually all had COVID. We had Alpha back at Christmas time when you had Alpha, pretty much right at the same time. And the kids did too.
Good times.
Yeah, but we were all fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't, even with Alpha, it wasn't that big of a deal. But my big question, I've been, because we're LAUSD, and I've been poking around on the website and trying to figure it out, because I'm just worried about waiting too long in between boosters and having them not count the two vaccines. And I re-listened to Dr. Prasad's podcast that you did with him, and I'm just trying to figure out when maybe I should do it. I didn't know if you might have any idea of how long LAUSD would say would be too long of a window, because I was thinking like 6 or 8 weeks.
I think say 6 to 8 weeks is good. 8 weeks is good. Can you check with a school nurse or anything to talk about what your intentions are?
I can try, but kind of everything I run into is just, everybody's just towing the line. And even my kid's pediatrician, who I love dearly, and on other subjects, she's usually very much think outside the box. With this one, we belong to a very large,
HMO
agency here. And so I think she's just having to, toe the line.
Well,
like,
if she's in, Kaiser
is
very much institutional like that. So if it's Kaiser, that's probably it. But you're not being outside the box. You're being consistent with international standards and very good evidence. That's what's crazy to me. It's like outside the box is the mandates that don't quite make sense. But okay. But I wish I had something more, Aaron. I keep doing what you're doing. I would check with the school resources. That's about all you can do. And hopefully that'll be enough. Hang on here, guys. Let me get you up here. This is Scooby Snack. I'm not quite sure. Of course, now there we are. Tom, what's going on?
Hey, Dr. Drew.
Hey, Tom. What's up?
Hey, buddy. Question for you. I remember early on in the pandemic when we were listening to advice on vaccination,
Mm-hmm.
it sounded like the experts had said that if you contracted COVID and didn't know it, for example, and then you were given the mRNA vaccine,
Mm-hmm.
that it could cause adverse reaction. Is that accurate?
I remember something about that, but that didn't turn out to be a significant issue. There is something. What did I read just the other day? Something in that zone again, but it never really produced much. In fact, that quickly went to, if you have natural immunity and you want to be certain of sustaining it, it's a good idea to get vaccinated.
And the only reason I mentioned that because the Bob Saget and this gal that you'd mentioned earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think you said Chelsea Handler. I was just wondering, is there any chance that they happen to have it asymptomatic and they got a booster and then they had a reaction as a result?
Who knows? I mean, that's certainly possible. The interesting question. Again, these are all things. This is why I want to know more. This is all stuff that needs to be investigated, or maybe it's nothing, or maybe it has nothing to do with it.
Sure.
But we have to be asking these questions and try to figure out what's going on. And I've been repeating today that Vinay Prasad is your best source. He is just on top of the literature. He has great judgment, and he is questioning what the evidence is for certain, particularly things like boosting after natural immunity, or there's so many things we're doing that have essentially no actual formal evidence to do, and we're just doing it. So it's rather a strange time. Thank you for the call, Tom. I'm still waiting for Rory, and let's get wait a minute, we've shifted around here again. See who comes up here. I've asked for several people and see who shows up. Dario, what's going on?
Good night, Dr. Drew.
How are you, sir?
I had COVID last year in January, and I developed some chest comfort pains. But I didn't study much of it because it wasn't bad. It wasn't really painful or what's not. But will it go away by itself?
What's that?
Will the chest pains go away by itself?
Oh, you're still having them since COVID?
Yeah.
And where are they?
It's just in my chest. Like if I lay on my chest, I will feel it. It's not like terrible pain, but it's there.
Is it right in the center? Is it one side or the other? Is it front or back?
Yeah, one side.
One side. And is it worse when you take a deep breath?
No.
Is it sharp like a knife, or is it burning or searing?
You could say, like a little pressure.
Pressure. And then how long ago was the COVID episode?
That was in last year around January.
January a year ago. So it's hard to make much of that. I mean, you probably ought to get a chest X-ray just to make sure there's not something goofy that's unexpected going on. A small pneumothorax or something. Who knows? There can be clots. Did you have a severe case of COVID?
I just had the headache, fever.
But you didn't get hospitalized?
No.
Yeah. The one thing that we now know about COVID is that a lot of it is an endovascular process, and you can get clots in your lungs. I just had someone in the hospital a couple weeks ago who had multiple small clots. And those can, I guess, potentially leave a little pain behind if you have an infarct or something. But none of this sounds serious, but it is something a doctor should evaluate, of course, completely, just to be certain there's not something unrelated going on there. Thanks for that call. Ilana, speaking of Ilana Susan, she's going to complete the
Hola, Ilana.
The Heather McDonald story. Hey there.
Hi.
Hi.
I should say hey now.
Hey now.
So, Susan, I just want to say that I only sent that to you. I just sort of felt like I had to send it to you. I'd gotten a notice on her Patreon page. So, that's why I sent that to you. So I think it's weird that you were just thinking of Heather when I sent it to you. But
I was.
Just one. I know.
I think about her a lot.
Oh, well, I am too right now. So anyway, so Drew, you retweeted on a totally different topic. You retweeted something from Michael Schellenberger about San Francisco today.
Yeah.
And I read through it, and it totally reminded me of Hamsterdam from The Wire. I don't know if you ever saw that show.
I didn't, unfortunately. And what was the story?
The story was that the police wanted to set up an area where drugs were legal, but not sort of tell the rest of the government that that's what they were doing.
Right.
And what you were saying, or what Michael Schellenberger was saying, was exactly sort of what has happened. So I just find it fascinating, as well as the fact that I live 45 minutes south of San Francisco, and I cannot stand going there. And it's a beautiful city, but because of that issue.
I am telling you, the one ingredient, the one phenomenon that is being left out of the discussion on the addicts on the street, nowhere more so than in San Francisco, is that addiction is a progressive disease. It progresses, particularly when it's severe like this. It progresses to death, even if a nurse is administering the drug. It doesn't matter who's administering it or how safe the administration is. The disease progresses. And I'm here to tell you, we're starting to see the uptick in the fentanyl death. When we start to see the uptick in the meth deaths, there's going to be a sudden uptick, and that may take another year or so before those kick in. But that's going to be, those of you that are from your mom's house, Fed smoker, that was a meth death. He trundled along for many years being his psychotic self, and then all of a sudden, boom, dead. That's the way meth goes. And it's going to be very interesting when the number of dead per day on the LA County streets is 100 per day instead of just 5 per day. There we go. So yeah, but read his stuff, Ilana. Michael Schellenberger. I toured. I had the privilege to tour Skid Row with him, and he started. It was when the light bulb was going off in his head about what's going on here, and he is so bright. He is a smart dude and has an uncanny pen. He knows how to express himself.
Yes. Anyway, thank you. I just wanted to
you got
bring
it.
that up.
Thanks, Lana. Take care. We're going to take a break in just a second. I want to quickly address a couple of Restream things here.
Also, don't forget to get your drdrew.com shop bobblehead for Valentine's Day,
which is right here. And Ilana was instrumental in helping Susan develop this. Dr. Dividend said, I'm a doctor and the vaccine absolutely works. Yes, no one is arguing whether the vaccine works. It works. Vaccine therapy, antiviral therapy, monoclonal antibody therapies, these things work.
Keeps you from dying.
Very effectively. And somebody then said, if it was 100% effective, you wouldn't get COVID with a vaccine ever. Yes, a perfect vaccine.
But nobody ever said that it was going to stop you from
respiratory virus, that doesn't tend to happen. Here's what a vaccine is. Something that stimulates your immune system in response to a protein or pathogen. So when you see it again, you have a much stronger response. You have an immediate strong response to fight it away. Not to prevent the infection, but to fight it off and prevent severe infection. Gabor Mate is excellent. I'm a Gabor Mate fan. So yes, of course they work. Now, the one thing that was misleading from the government was that that people who are vaccinated wouldn't pass the virus. Well, with Omicron, that was categorically not the case. People who were vaccinated passed it, but they didn't themselves pass. They didn't end up in the hospital. I can tell you for sure, I was seeing literally hundreds of patients during the Omicron outbreak, and if people were boosted, it went a lot better. People were vaccinated, it went well. People were unvaccinated, it was rough. Not as rough as Delta or Alpha, but it could be pretty rough. So yeah, this is working. Now, if we can get the Paxlovid going, so if you get sick, you get an antiviral right away, no one's going in the hospital, or very few people are going in the hospital. If we get monoclonal antibodies properly distributed, again, keep people out of the hospital. That was my point when I had Alpha and I was doing those Instagram lives sitting in my window, just going, you got to understand how much of a difference this made for me. And
that was Alpha or Delta?
It was Alpha. It was Alpha.
It was?
The first one.
I thought it was Delta.
Delta came later. No.
I didn't even know that Alpha existed.
Alpha is we're just sort of calling it that now. It's the first one, the first virus. And then when the vaccine came around and there was another outbreak, it was Delta. Okay, let's take a little break. We'll be back with your Restream comments and more calls in just a few minutes. Since the beginning of the pandemic, nearly 1 in 5 Americans has reported consuming an unhealthy amount of alcohol. Could be you, but only 10% of them are actually getting the help they need. Reframe is a neuroscience-based smartphone app that helps users cut back or quit drinking alcohol altogether. Using evidence-based tools, techniques, and content, Reframe guides users through a personalized program to help them reach their goals. Comprised of daily tasks, a comprehensive toolkit, a community forum, and accountability guides, Reframe is a modern, accessible, and affordable resource that can help anyone looking to reevaluate their relationship with alcohol. Reframe is backed by Harvard University and Emory University Schools of Medicine, and it is ranked the #1 alcohol reduction smartphone app worldwide with over 350,000 downloads. With Reframe, there's no stigma, just science, no labels, just support. To learn more, go to joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Use the code Dr. Drew for 25% off your first month or your annual subscription. That's at joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Let's talk about our friends at Hydralyte. I can't say enough about Hydralyte. You hear me talk about them all the time. It gets me through workouts and medical procedures and colonoscopies and COVID. It absolutely contributed to my recovery from COVID. Hydration is key to feeling healthy, and there's never been a time when that could be more important. We're in the height of cold flu season. Every headache has got you testing for COVID. Staying hydrated can keep the questionable symptoms at bay, and there's nothing better than Hydralyte to get it done. Taking their hydration formula one step further, now there is Hydralyte Plus Immunity. It starts with their fast-absorbing electrolytes and adds a host of great ingredients. Plus, each single-serve, easy-pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 300 milligrams of elderberry extract. Hydralyte Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy-pour powder sticks that rapidly dissolve in water to make a great-tasting drink that has a 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. It uses all-natural flavors. It's gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, non-GMO, and even vegan. Hydralyte Plus Immunity is also now available in ready-to-drink bottles at the Walmart next to the pharmacy, or as always, you can find it by visiting hydralyte.com/Dr. Drew. That is hydralyte.com/Dr. Drew. And be sure to use that code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout for a special discount. In those very short 2 minutes, interesting things are happening on Restream. Let me first address the Berg show. How do I get off Afrin nasal spray? You've got something called rhinitis medicamentosa. You can actually get the same thing from eye drops. You can get a conjunctivitis medicamentosa. They are very hard to stop. Your tissues are responding in sort of withdrawal to the Afrin, and you've got to use steroids to get them off. You should see a physician about it. Sometimes you have to even use systemic steroids to get it under control. Look up rhinitis medicamentosa. Not good. All right. Here's Ira saying, I used to respect you. You seem to have sold out the truth to the people. Why aren't you talking about the negative effects of gene-altering therapy? So let's start that first. So first of all, you're suggesting that mRNA would alter genes. Well, you know, mRNA is just a structure that floats in the cytoplasm and produces proteins, the spike protein in this case. It has no way in the human cell to get into the nucleus. Plus, even if it did get in the nucleus, it would need something called a reverse transcriptase to turn it into DNA, which we do not have. So there's zero possibility of getting into the genome. There is a viable sort of conversation about the spike protein that is produced from the mRNA therapies. They're showing up in tissues where we don't want it. And that's an interesting thing. We have to figure what that's all about. And because it is specifically narrowly to the spike protein, it might not be giving as broad immunity, certainly as natural immunity, or even as some of the more sort of traditional platforms like Dr. Hotez's platform we talked about last week. So there you go. And you said there's evidence coming out of Israel. The data coming out of Israel, take a look at Alex Berenson. Oh, darn, I'm muted on Clubhouse. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry about that mute. Take a look at Alex Berenson. He is attacking the Israeli data. Alex is an important voice. He's not always right, but he's an important voice. And look at what he's thinking about. They're thinking more about the idea that there might be some alteration of immune function, making people more prone to infection after multiple boosters. I don't have an opinion about that, and I don't see any evidence that substantiates it, but important to consider, and talk about. Okay, so that's that. No, you can't cold turkey Afrin, Aaron. Sorry about that. Well, if you use it a couple times, you can. Okay, and then Mackay keeps talking about the Johns Hopkins study about vaccines. That was not a vaccine therapy. That was a lockdown study. And it was a meta-analysis. It wasn't a great study, but that was not a vaccine study. It was a lockdown study showing lockdowns having an effect of 0.02. So take a look at that. Again, I've been avoiding that study because I've not had a chance to. It seems complicated to analyze it. That's that comment that Mackay made there. Let's see. Okay, Tim's going on. The big American media, if they hadn't sold out to Big Pharma, would have had Dr. Vallone, Dr. Fauci on TV for a 3-hour debate. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you guys that the weird narrative shutting down. As Adam and I had long talks every day, and Crowley keeps saying there's a pattern and there's a direction that pattern goes, and that pattern is we get to correct ourselves. We say things with great certainty and make them mandated. And then we go, oh, no, just kidding. We're going to adjust and adjust. I don't mind the adjusting, but then you're actively silencing anybody that is not completely consistent with the going narrative. And the science is not a narrative-driven phenomenon. It needs to be part of discourse and knowledge growth. And there has to be back and forth, which is why I like having interesting people on this program. So I will have Peter Hotez. I'll have Bhattacharya, Jay Bhattacharya in here. And hopefully they will change my mind. You should be excited when your mind is changed. That should be a thrilling thing to you. And by the same token, you need to be aware of your biases. I did a long thing here last week about positive and negative biases. Hotez has a negative bias. I have a positive bias. Takes us to two different places. But we should be aware of those things and being very careful about how they affect our thinking. All right, let me look again at some calls here, guys. I know, Russ, you had to go for an emergency. Sorry about that. Okay, Midge, let's get you up here. Hi, Midge, what's going on?
Oh, hi, Dr. Drew. I'm really chuffed to be speaking with you. I hope you're well.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Just making sure that you can hear me.
I got you.
Okay, so I'm over in the UK at the moment, and there's a lot of talk about a HIV protein that's in the vaccines and in the boosters.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think you put that, somebody put that on the restream. It might have been you.
Yes, I did.
And it was confusing to me. I don't know how would there are the antivirals are HIV medication. Much of the antivirals that have found work against COVID were developed for HIV, but I'm not aware. Maybe in one of the platforms that's coming up, there's something about an HIV protein or something. Not with the mRNA vaccine, that's for sure.
Okay, and so that's entirely exactly why I wanted to speak to you and ask the question, because there's a lot of push in the media over here about people now getting tested every 12 months, men on men every 3 months, and people are almost making a correlation between the vaccine, the booster, and this HIV supposedly protein that's in them.
Well,
and
I would worry. I'll tell you what I would worry. I would worry more that it somehow prevented the your immunity to fight off HIV or maybe activate HIV or something like that. I'm looking up HIV and okay, Australia scraps the ones that produce the HIV false. Okay, so that's University of Queensland was the first to go. So I guess there was one that did that. Let's find out what this is. Hold on. Australia on Friday canceled a $750 million plan for a large order of the locally in Australia developed coronavirus vaccine that produced false positive results for HIV. So there you go. So there it is. So whatever that vaccine was, let's see if it had planned to buy from Australia consortium by Increase AstraZeneca Novavax. That's different. They're not giving this one a name for me, so it didn't even have a name yet. Okay.
Right.
So there it is. So, it's Australia, and it's not being used, which is good.
It's not being used at all. Okay.
Okay.
Right. No. Oh, that's lovely. Can I just have 2 more minutes of your time? Could I possibly? Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you about. Oh, this might be a little bit. The Beagles with Fauci. That's another big thing over here
The
in
what
the
with
UK.
Fauci? Tell me more. The what with Fauci?
Big
Beagles.
news.
Big news.
The testing on the beagles.
Oh, the beagle.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of that. I heard about it. It came up and went away. What are they saying there? Let me look that up too. I'm so fascinated. You guys are. Why are you guys worrying about what this country is doing? We are failing in this. We are doing a horrible job over here.
Oh, this is why we're so interested. It's not the fact that you're failing as such, and I'll be completely honest with you. I've been following you for weeks. I've seen you on TV for years. I actually trust what comes out of your mouth more than I do any of the doctors over here, to be honest. Why are we so interested? It's massive everywhere, all over the world. The beagle thing, it's huge over here. Just the force of the testing. Do you believe that it needs to be that way?
What needs to be that way? What needs to be that way?
Just the force on the videos that have being passed around and how the beagles are being treated.
Yeah, I'm reading about it right here.
There must be an element, sorry to interrupt, there must be an element of needing from a medical point of view to test, but just the force and the cruelty. I believe it's just really unnecessary. I just wanted
historically, the medical research establishment in this country, we're way behind what goes on in Britain. You understand that in terms of animals, how animals are treated in experimental settings. And the treatment of dogs has been bad over many years. It was just sort of dealt with as these were dogs that were going to be exterminated at these extermination centers that we have in this country, though there are animal, control places that don't do that, but most of them do it. And they would just take them out of these extermination camps, essentially, and they would do not so good things. So I'm wondering.
They've also done that. Sorry to interrupt. They've also done that with monkeys all over the world. I mean,
I know.
I'm not just calling out America here and just Dr. Fauci. Believe me. I'm just wondering, how far does medical testing actually need to go? What is necessary for?
This is an area, Midge. I know what you're getting at. I have been specifically. I wouldn't say I'm agnostic because I'm not, but I have not been in the argument because I don't fully understand it. You're asking of the actual relevant question, and I've seen people ask it many different ways. It usually goes to, why can't we computer model this? Why do we have to be? Why do we have to be so? There's got to be a word for this. We're using the animals excessively and so casually. Why don't we, if we need to do that stage of the studies, why aren't we doing that in a much more controlled, limited kind of way? And
exactly.
I don't know. I don't do that kind of research. I'm not the person that could answer it. It might be a cost. I don't know. Who knows? A cost issue. Who knows? But I share your concerns. And I know a lot of people do. I mean, there's organizations here that's all they think about. But I do know that, of course, medical research on animals is necessary. We have to have mammalian systems. The question is, could we do it on a much more limited basis and on a much more humane basis without excess cost? And these are really hard questions, Midge, but I'm sorry. Maybe I'm past, maybe I'm being ethically irresponsible by not taking a position. You could argue that, but I would need to know more.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
I'm really chuffed to speak with you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Very interesting. I'm going to go to your stream here and see what you guys are. Yes, agnostic. That's got to be Tom. No, it's mock disaster. Yes, sheep. Yep. Don't Australia kill shelter dogs at the beginning of the pandemic in order to prevent people from going to shelters? I don't know the answer to that. Can I type in your browser, Okay, I will do that. All right. We are getting towards the end here, guys. I want to try to get to everybody possible. There's still lots of hands up, so I'm trying to get to you guys. It's interesting. A lot of people from the UK. That is so fascinating. Josh, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Drew.
Hey there.
I was just wondering about why it is that the doctors are not allowed to give their opinions, and also what happened to Joe Rogan, because he seems to be political, but he seems to be at least providing an interview.
Yeah. So let me. I thank you for bringing that up. Let me give you my opinion on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, I've known for years. He is a good guy. He's a smart guy. He is interested in interesting conversation. He's a curious guy. And if you really look at who he likes interviewing people who are particularly, I'm not sure provocative is the right word, who are not offering opinions that are well developed but are not part of the mainstream. Like he right now, like last week, had a guy up there that's a geophysicist who had really interesting conversations to say about cataclysmic events in geological history and civilization history in the United States. He's not mainstream. You could say that's misinformation. He's delivering misinformation. But I myself, just to that point about misinformation, I read a book in the 70s called the collision. I have to look it up. Collision of Worlds or something. Like, I think the guy's name was Asimov. And people were laughing him out of the scientific community. Collision of Worlds. Is it Asimov? Yes. Emmanuel Velikovsky. There it is. Emmanuel Velikovsky. There, Worlds in Collision. This is the guy's name. Emmanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision. And he wrote that, and it was about the idea that, maybe we've had some things collide from outer space with this world that had never been contemplated. That we were looking up at the moon with a bunch of asteroid pockmarks in it. That wouldn't happen to us. We're protected by the atmosphere. No, we're not. No, we're not, especially big things that get it. Why would we're watching things collide with Jupiter. Why would we magically not have a collision? We're somehow special? No. And the point being that Joe would have talked to Velikovsky back in the day. Now he talks to this other guy. Caleb, you can get the guy's name, that he's got a big beard, really interesting guy, really smart guy, but he's reporting on his hobby, not on his academic pursuits. And Joe the whole time is going, whoa, wow, oh, amazing. He loves that amazing. He talks to guys about Area 51 all the time. He interviewed that guy, Bob, that was supposedly a physicist that was inside the spaceship on Area 51. He loves that stuff. Yeah, there it is, Emmanuel Velikovsky. But no, what did I want you to put up there? The guy that Joe was interviewing like 2 days ago.
So it made me think of something. It made me think of this idea of the synthesis that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a little different.
About how we kind of go back and forth.
Yep.
And I had an interesting idea that it doesn't really have to do with Trump. My theory is that it goes all the way back to World War II.
Oh, I think you can take it back to the Civil War if you want.
Okay, so
you can go back.
For whatever reason, it feels very World War II-ish to me. And I feel like the Nazis were such an abominable enemy for us at that time. And the synthesis is going to be some kind of quasi weird, not Nazism here, but something where it's a synthesis between the 1940s America and the actual Nazi party. That's my idea of a synthesis.
Okay, but I don't know how to predict things like that, in that we've never really, I mean, there have been Nazis here, but the synthesis is usually amongst two big trends. So the synthesis would be sort of between, left and right, maybe a new party emerges. I mean, that's what happened pre-Civil War. I'm looking up this Randall Carlson guy that Caleb is prompting me about to see if that's the guy. Establishing this, yeah, that's him. New educational paradigm as seen on the Joe Rogan Experience. Yeah, Cosmographia, investigate and document the catastrophic history of the world. Yeah, that's him. And, this is an outlier, dude. That's like talking to Bob from Area 51. These are outlying opinions. That's what turns Joe on. That's what he loves to do. And you know what? I love listening to it. It makes you think. You shouldn't take it as gospel, but it makes you think. And that's exactly what he's trying to get you to do. And that people are for attacking him essentially for not towing a narrative that's on the verge of disgusting to me. It also is saying that people can't think for themselves and that people are, unwitting dupe lemmings. And they get it. Whether he didn't, it's not as every day championing what Peter McCullough said or anything like that. He just looked at their data and went, "Oh, that's interesting. Isn't that fun? Let me talk to Randy Crandall now." Is that his name? Randall Crandall? What was the name against Caleb? Put it up there. And he just moves on and he does more interesting stuff. One day after, he has to come up with an interesting podcast every day. And then they're 3-4 hour podcasts. It's not easy to keep him interested, let alone us. And so, of course, he's going to, if you've heard it a million times in the narrative on the TV, why would he interview that guy? There's no reason he would do that. Randall Carlson, thank you. No reason he would do that interview. That's not what's interesting in a long form podcast. Now, somebody did a little sort of a tally of how many left versus right leaning guests he's had. And by the way, they put a whole bunch of lefties on the right list that are just sort of escaping liberalism because they don't like the wokeism. But there are people that voted for Democratic presidents for the last 3 presidency on his right list. So that's kind of weird. But okay, I think he realized that he could try to come up with some alternative balancing opinions. If he paid attention to that, he could easily. He will. I'm sure he will do that. But in the meantime, just shut up. Everyone just kind of shut up about it. I mean, it really is just, it's making me, it really is troubling me. It really is. Silencing somebody. Oh, it's too much. All right. Well, thank you for spending a little time with us today. Tomorrow, I think we do have Monica Gandhi, do we not, Susan, in addition to Bethany Shondark?
I think we do.
Okay. And I want to get Monica to talk some sanity about what she's observing out in the medical establishment right now and what we should be doing with masks.
It looks like we're starting with Bethany at 3 and Dr. Gandhi at 3:30.
There'll be a lot to talk about. And then on Thursday, we have Dr. Arthur Kaplan, the ethicist, coming back. And we're trying to see if Heather McDonald can swing by to talk about her tale of woe on Wednesday when she gets back. What's that, Susan? Can't hear you.
Wednesday, if she feels up.
If she feels up to it.
Or we can, yeah.
I'm going to go on her podcast and interpret all her discharge papers, so we'll get to that. But
we can also just take questions on Wednesday if we can't get her.
Okay. Thank you guys for stopping by, and thank you for all the questions on Clubhouse. Well done, and very active, lively restream. I dug that as well. Thank you for that, and we will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
As usual.
3 o'clock.
The procedure you had done, like we've said, we did in the podcast studio. It's the same procedure.
When he was telling me he was doing it, I felt this familiar. I go, oh, I know this deal already. But I also was like, why am I having this happen again on my face this time?
You thought it was an ingrown hair to begin with, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to bet it was.
Being hairy is the worst curse that I don't want to hear a woman say anything about her vagina ever again. Be hairy and then talk to me.
My friend, this is a burden.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources